If you want to be able to buy the most expensive players and open the best packs in FC25, go to u7buy.com to buy your EA FC25 coins. It's cheaper than buying FC points and just as reliable. With their already amazing prices, you can get an extra 6% using promo code Inception at checkout. Hey guys, what's going on? Inception here, and welcome to another video. So if any of you rich guys end up doing the Player of the Month haul-in on PC or PS5, be sure to shoot me a DM. I would have done it on my account, but it's a new account, so I can't really do it on the... I can't do the mobile stuff yet. I have to wait a week and then not have that problem anymore for future SBC. So yeah, if anybody completes that card, shoot me a message in the Instagram account or the Discord server in the link down below, and then we'll just go from there. So yeah, for today, we're going to be checking out this new evolution. The evolution is going to be called From Box to Box, right? So From Box to Box evolution, a couple of interesting variables to work with, right? So you get a couple of stat improvements, you get a relentless on the card, and then you also go with some stat improvements again, right? So a relentless is actually a really good play style to get. It's incredibly helpful to work with. I think even Bellingham has a regular... Oh no, he has Relentless Plus, bro. It's very noticeable on Bellingham when he has that Relentless Plus, but a regular one would definitely be a huge deal to work with too, in the general midfield positions, right? So let's go ahead and check out what you could potentially go with when it comes down to this evolution. There's obviously going to be a couple of different options that could be interesting to some people, right? So obviously the one that's trending in the game as of right now is the Loftus-Cheek card. With Loftus-Cheek, he does receive quite significant improvements for a card that is a 4-star player, right? So because he's a 4-star player, you know, especially at this point in the game, very early on, there's a lot that you can work with, right? This card is going to be on a lengthy with a Shadow Chemistry style, which is going to be a very big deal. Player roles, the card has a half winger, a box-to-box, and a playmaker, right? So in the center mid position, honestly, the main way I would see him being used is mostly going to be on that box-to-box role, on that Shadow Chemistry style, because the card actually has some shooting capabilities, right? So that's definitely something to look into if you want to use a card like this in, excuse me, that general area. Jolington is another card you could potentially go with, obviously well formatted in that sense as well. Shadow Chemistry style does keep him at a mostly lengthy, right? So some very good stat improvements for a card like that. Eligible players overview. I think the best way to do this is to go like this, because I think Footbin doesn't always update the skill moves in the weak foot properly, so it becomes a little bit dangerous to look at those cards, right? Oh, FootWiz is not even working either. Word. So yeah, just be mindful of the, well, it's just stat improvements, right? They don't get the weak foot or strong foot, so no big deal there. Jolington, another card that gets significantly improved. He is a little bit rough in the dribbling department, right? That could be a nuisance for some people, depending, because it is a card that you would have to mainly use as an actual center mid. That could potentially score some opportunities. He is going to be on a mostly lengthy on that Shadow Chemistry style. However, it doesn't look as crazy as someone like Loftus-Cheek, right? With this card, you definitely have to hope for some future evolutions, because that is always a variable that you do have to consider with these cards, right? But as of, you know, people like to get the cards pretty quickly in comparison, right? But you should obviously be going for Sentimental as much as possible. But again, people want to go with cards that gives them pretty meta stuff to work with in the beginning of the year, right? So Loftus-Cheek looks pretty good. I also seen Kobbie actually trending in here for people to kind of make him a little bit usable as well, right? So from box to box, you can improve him to an 80 rated. So I guess with cards like this, it would make sense, because honestly, last year, when it came to Kobbie's cards, they didn't really release too many crazy things. And what's nice about this card is that you can turn him into a CDM, because he has both of those position changes, right? So when you're starting off your team and you have him as a center mid or you have him as a CDM, you can rotate that accordingly, right? So that's definitely a really cool thing that you could potentially work with. Definitely very helpful in that regard. If I go into the roles, he has holding plus, and I think holding plus in that CDM position it's a pretty big meta thing to work with, right? Center mid-wise, you can use him as a box-to-box, usability-wise. With this card, you would have to provide him with a shadow chemistry style to improve him as much as possible. But there's potential with this card in the future to get even further improvements. A relentless on him would definitely be a really cool added feature to him for sure, right? So some really cool stuff there. You can get other cards like a Sobosloy. To be honest with you guys, I hope that he gets significantly improved in the future. I've used this card more specifically in the draft, and I didn't enjoy using him at all. But again, with roles being a thing, he doesn't really have Playmaker, right? Playmaker plus, and that's what I really wanted in that cam position for the formation that I was using. And he really wasn't cutting it for me in that general area when it came to, like, you know, just being able to attack a certain way. With this card, you know, potentially with the engine, I guess, as of right now, to make his dribbling a little bit better, give him that pace boost, and then shooting's in a decent area for the beginning of the year. You can't go wrong with that, right? Liverpool player. Do I think that they'll probably make Sobosloy cards? Yeah, I think for most of these cards, there's a lot of potential with them, you know, making new cards, but, you know. Zaire-Emery, this one I actually wanted to skip past that Rangers one a little bit, because Zaire-Emery last year was actually very solid to use. Again, very important to mention with the player positioning. He can play as a center mid or a CDM, right? So when you're setting up your team, you can do either or, which is very important, because when you're rotating your formation in game, you need to have the capability of being able to do this. It's a very, very important thing to mention for people to be able to rotate their players accordingly, right? Because if you're playing a 4-2-2 and you're like, I kind of need to switch to a 4-4-2 right now, or, you know, a 4-1-2-2, but I want to play him as a center mid, you have that capability, right? And then if you go into the roles, he has pluses for both of those roles. So in the CDM position, you can use him as the deep lying playmaker. Center mid playmaker plus with a box-to-box plus would also be a pretty decent thing to work with as well too, right? So not too bad there. We have a Sira player with Rangers. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he has good position changes, right? Good position changes definitely adds a lot to the card, especially for someone who is a 4-star player, because with this card, you know, you'd probably give him like a shadow chemistry style. You'd probably use him in a way where he can basically be rotated. Excuse me. He can basically be rotated into any of those positions, right? Center mid, cam, CDM would definitely be really ideal for him. Decent play styles to work with. Definitely looks mainly like a center mid type player, but a lot of these cards, if provided with the shadow chemistry style, can potentially play in the actual CDM position and do a pretty decent job there, right? So it's nice to be able to look at cards that, you know, they get the stat improvements, but they're also like minimum 4-star. And that's always going to be very helpful to work with for the general meta. That's always going to be the case, right? No matter what. We also have Kier. Honestly, Kier could be a really solid card too if you are building a team at some point in the future, even right now, where you think you're going to put like a Mahrez in your team, right? That's probably going to be like the main card. Maybe Roberto Firmino gets something cool in the future. Who knows? Tony, I don't think. Oh no, Tony this year they could do something cool with him. They definitely could. I'm not gonna say fully that they won't be able to. I think they definitely could. But with Kier, obviously some very good improvements on the card. A lot of good stuff to work with. Roles wise, he has good roles, man. The CDM has the holding plus, deep lying playmaker. Again, with the center mid, he has the box-to-box. So a couple of different ways of being able to use him. So if you are building some sort of like Saudi League team, it's definitely really cool. Cards like Ronaldo Sanchez, always going to be cool to get these things as well. You go to playstyles, gets that relentless 4-star capabilities from both of these stats improvements, significantly improving the card, right? I mean, you go in the direction of giving him a shadow chemistry style, really good pace, defensive stats significantly improved, more potential in the future to be improved as well if you want to build some sort of Liga NOS team, right? A lot of good options for this one. I think this one's going to have plenty of different ones. Like, obviously, you can go with the sentimental cards as well, because at some point, you'll be able to improve these cards to be really nice, right? So people will go with like some sort of concept in their team where they'll rock with Ethan Mbappe as well as Kylian Mbappe, and then they have like the French links in that way and do something cool with that, right? Some people will actually go down that route and kind of improve the cards in that way. But there's a lot of very good midfield options for this one, right? Like, even if you were to go with João Neves, right? You're building some sort of Portuguese team. That's a nice little triple link setup to someone like Nuno Mendes, right? So with Nuno Mendes in the team, you have that triple link setup. You give this card a shadow. He's well formatted, especially for the beginning of the year, right? He's got great pace. Defensive stats is in a significantly better area. Yeah, he's still a 3-star, but adding the playstyle of Relentless on the card is nice because he's also working with a regular press proven, right? So press proven, pretty cool to work with too. A lot of interesting stuff there as well, right? So also always a key thing to mention with these cards as well, difference between center mid and CDM. You can rotate that accordingly in the game if you need to switch to a formation that has midfielders in the center mid position or the CDM position. Always a big thing to look at, right? Eze gets one as well. Nice little improvement on him. He's a 4-star, 3-star player. You could go down the route of giving him a Hunter chemistry style to increase the pace as well as the shooting on the card. At this point in the game, these cards are usable, right? Like the only way that you're going to really feel a big difference with the cards is when you start going with like the full meta cards, which to be fair, make a massive difference in people's teams just to be able to kind of like move properly into certain areas. You definitely notice that difference when you move from a draft to a regular play, right? Yeah, there's a few for this one. Mateus Nunes also gets one. I don't think this guy really got much last year. I think they gave him a card last year, but it wasn't like super relevant, right? It was like this card. Yeah, he wasn't really used that often, even though he has really good playstyles. I guess because of base characteristics, people didn't really look into that card as much. So yeah, Mateus Nunes, he gets a nice one as well. 3-star, 3-star. The cool thing with this card is obviously that huge pace boost, right? The pace boost is definitely a very big thing on a shadow chemistry style. The only downfall of the card is that he doesn't have a CDM position change, but he does have a left mid one. The left mid one is okay, you know, if you put specific instructions in that area. The problem is that he doesn't have a 4-star weak foot if I want to rotate him as a left mid with the player role of, you would see right here, wide midfielder, right? So it's possible to do this. I wouldn't say it's like fully ideal, right? That's why Loftus-Cheek is trending as a top, because he looks really well formatted for people that want evolutions right away. Enzo Fernandez getting improved is always a nice thing too, right? If you think he's not going to get any sort of cards in the future as well. Honestly, I actually enjoy using this card a lot. The playstyle plus on him with the long ball pass is definitely quite noticeable. I think the pace improvements would definitely be a really big deal, especially on that shadow with the acceleration and sprint speed being higher. Rolls wise, he has very good rolls as well, right? Holding plus for both center mid and CDM position while working with very good playstyles, right? Like I mentioned many times to people that I have actually enjoyed using Enzo Fernandez in the midfield from the rare gold, from the cheaper alternatives in the beginning of the year, because he actually moves across the pitch quite nicely. So can't really go wrong with a choice like this as well, especially if you want to improve him in the future. We have some other cards here, like Gallagher. Gallagher gets an improvement for Atletico Madrid player. Really well formatted, which is nice for him, because then you give him a shadow chemistry style, has 3 different position changes, mostly for you to use them as a CDM or center mid. But again, really good playstyles being added. He does have intercept, and intercept is a very, very nice playstyle, especially for a card like this that gets that pace improvement, gets the defending, and then he's kind of like well formatted in a general sense to be a pretty decent card as well, right? So again, lots of really nice choices for this one. There's definitely not going to be like super obvious ones. Darder, this guy always gets an evolution. I don't really often see him being used that much, but you know, does have a press proven, flare, long ball pass, right? It would be really cool to kind of go in the direction of cards that do have intercept, because in the center mid and CDM position, it's always going to be a very helpful playstyle to work with in a general sense, right? Always going to be someone to look into as well. Benton Core gets one, right? Some really nice improvements for a card that is already 4-star, 4-star. Again, guys, all of these cards you can further improve, right? So it's not just looking at what the card is right now, it's looking at what he could potentially be in the future that really matters as well, right? So we always have to take these things into consideration, right? Good improvements there. But yeah, Tudom even gets one, right? There's going to be a ton of options for you to be able to chain link these evos to be really, really nice cards. If I were to go to Easy SBC, let's see meta-wise what they actually have. So meta-wise, a couple of obvious ones. See, this one would make sense, right? Celtic player that gets a 4-star, 4-star That's really nice. Really good improvements for that one. Zambo gets improved. Not too bad there. Zakaria gets one as well for a Monaco team. Kondogbia, haven't seen that guy in a minute. Fenerbahce fans can get Fred. Fred gets a skill move upgrade. That's pretty cool. Especially for a card that is actually a box-to-box plus. So if you're playing a 4-4-2 and you want your midfielder to be that box-to-box, Fred could potentially cook in that area, right? The only thing about this card is that he already has Relentless Plus, right? So it's kind of pointless to go ahead and give it for him, but it depends on the person as well, right? Jetson Fernandez gets one, right? 4-star skill move upgrade on the card. Good position changes. We go into his playstyles, decent playstyles for the beginning of the year. Shadow Chemistry style, again, well formatted for the beginning, especially for people that are building some sort of Turkish league team with the Besiktas players. Yeah. Jolinton Alvarez gets one too, 68 pace. You kind of have to hope for future improvements for something like that as well. But yeah, no, there's definitely a couple of choices. Again, guys, always more ideal to go down the route of sentimental value for cards that you don't believe will ever get any sort of cards in the future. Because adding a Relentless to cards that are otherwise generic and don't have any playstyles is really cool. Like for me, for instance, like if I had Romario Barro or something, right, just as an example, you would kind of hope for this card to get improved in the future. But look, man, he already has the plus for box to box. Unfortunately, when it comes to position changes, he doesn't have CDM, so that's where it would throw me off a little bit more. But it is something that I could potentially consider in the future on a Shadow Chemistry style with all the improvements, right? So again, try your best to go sentimental if you can, because it'll improve cards that are otherwise generic into better cards. But for the most part, I think we've covered some of the main cards that I see being improved from this evolution, from cards that we can currently see, right? Like, honestly, guys, like I've even used a Caicedo. I was using him in the draft, and I didn't even have him on a Shadow Chemistry style. And Caicedo was actually pretty nice because with cards like this, you mostly use them as the holding midfielder anyways, right? And if you go into the roles, again, you can see two different position changes, but in the CDM position, he still has that holding plus, which is going to be a pretty meta thing to work with for the meta tactics that could be coming out soon for the channel, right? So always food for thought with a lot of these cards, guys. But yeah, Loftus-Cheek definitely looks like the best choice. There's going to be other choices that could potentially end up being better with future improvements on evolutions as well. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this video today, and I'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace out, dudes. Love you guys.